My name is Mike Trainer. I'm President and CEO of Union Mission, and it's my pleasure and my honor to introduce Kim Greene to you this morning. Kim was named Chairman, President, and CEO of Georgia Power in 2023. Kim leads Georgia Power in serving its 2.7 million customers throughout the state, and the company is part of the Southern Company, one of the nation's largest energy providers. Prior to her current position, Kim served as Chairman, President, and CEO of Southern Gas Company for 5 years and has more than a 33-year career in the energy field. She's a respected thought leader and an advocate for the future of energy, from overall energy policy to overall customer experience. Kim's presentation today is Embracing Authenticity, a Path to Strong Leadership. Let's give Kim a warm Savannah welcome.
Thank you very much, Mike, and good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It is such a pleasure to be in Savannah. Absolutely beautiful day outside, and I had the privilege of starting my day out with some of our employees who are working in the field. How many of you love electricity? Everybody, exactly. You love charging your phone, you love air conditioning, you love a refrigerator so that we can have safe food. You love a refrigeration so we can have safe medicine. When we do not have electricity, it's a very bad day. And I will say that I've had the privilege of working in this industry, as Mike said, for over 33 years. And before I started working in this industry, I really had no idea what goes on behind the scenes, so to speak. So I just want to start by encouraging all of you who are ever traveling up and down the roads and you see a Georgia Power truck with that beautiful triangle on it, stop and say hello. Thank the men and women who are out there in that vehicle doing work for you. I will say that this is an extraordinarily mission-driven company with employees who often find themselves thinking about you and others, those 2.7 million customers, before themselves. In fact, last time I was in, it wasn't the last time I was in Savannah, but I was in Savannah last fall when Hurricane Idalia had come through. It had come into the state of Georgia from the Big Bend area of Florida, came into Valdosta, made its way over to Savannah, and even remained a hurricane until about 40 miles east of Savannah. And particularly for folks in Valdosta and all the way over into Savannah, people lost electricity. It's a very bad day. People lose hope when they don't have electricity, when their communities are often ravaged by a windstorm, maybe an ice storm. And I was with employees here and all the way across South Georgia who were missing events like birthday parties. I was with a mother who brought her 7-year-old to celebrate her 7-year-old birthday party at the Storm Center. And this woman, who's an employee of Georgia Power, said, I did this with my mom. My mom worked at Georgia Power. And I just assure you that these men and women are selfless and are service-focused. And we are investing. The project that I went to see today is part of a kind of a specialized project where we are carving out millions and millions, hundreds of millions, ultimately over the state of Georgia, billions of dollars. But right here in Savannah, we'll be investing more than $300 million in just upgrading equipment on those power lines and those poles to ensure that your electricity is even more reliable and more safe than it's ever been. And there are a lot of people here from Georgia Power, and I'd like to acknowledge all of you, but there are 2 people in particular I'm going to acknowledge, and I think they hid in the back of the room, but I'm going to make them stand up so you can all see them. It's Hollis Risch and Carrie Walton. So Hollis and Carrie, stand up. All right, everybody give them a round of applause. Hollis is responsible for our distribution crews. Carrie is responsible for our transmission crews. And when the lights are out, these are the two people whose numbers you want to have. They are the folks who are ensuring that our men and women perform safely and get your power back as quickly as possible. But again, I'm very proud to be a part of this industry, proud to be a part of this company. And let me just tell you a little bit about how I started with this company. So, it's 1990, and I graduate engineering school with my master's degree in biomedical engineering. I thought I would be designing artificial orthopedic implants for the rest of my life. Does anybody in here have an artificial knee or hip or know somebody who does? Plenty of people. It's very common. So I wanted to help people who needed help be in the medical industry, but when I worked at a hospital, I got queasy every time I saw somebody get a shot. So my dad suggested, why don't you consider biomedical engineering? And I graduated from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. My husband's a pilot. I wanted to move to Warsaw, Indiana. He had a job flying an airplane for a bank in Birmingham, Alabama. He had wanted to be a pilot since he was this big, and he had actually gotten a job as a 22-year-old. I do sometimes think that those poor bankers who got in that plane with that 22-year-old who looked like he was about 12, they were probably like, do you really know how to fly this thing? But he was an awesome pilot. It was his dream. He remained a pilot for his entire career. But it was the first time, some of you might be part of a two-career household, and every now and then, you got to make a decision. And for me, I thought I was making a sacrifice to find a job in Birmingham, Alabama, not go to Warsaw, Indiana, which is where I wanted to go to work for a company called Zimmer. So I interviewed at the gas company, at the power company, at construction companies, and got on with the power company. I really didn't know anything again about electricity or power plants or anything like that, but I decided I'd give it the old college try. It probably worked for about 6 months, decide I hated it. Then I'd go to my husband and say, we're moving. Well, 33 years later, it obviously didn't work out like that. And I think there is a lot to unpack, to talk about, but one thing is that when I did go to work for the power company, I decided that I would just make the best of it, that I would go in with a good attitude, try to do the best job I could, even though I really didn't know a lot of the vocabulary or the language or what was happening. And I am very fortunate that I worked with a group of men who had not worked with a 22-year-old woman before, and instead of making me feel like I didn't belong or made me feel stupid when I didn't understand the vocabulary, they were very supportive of me, inclusive. They created an environment where every day I went into work and I felt like I was making a difference, that I was doing work that mattered. Because, again, providing electricity makes everybody's lives better. Not just our own personal lives, but our communities, our economies. And in addition to that mission-based foundation that our company holds dear, this idea of making communities better because we're there is real, and it pervades our DNA. And as a young, out-of-school engineer, I was given the opportunity to participate in the community, volunteer for nonprofit organizations. I served on the board of the Alabama Kidney Foundation, was allowed to go to school to learn about how to be on a board. And so all of these opportunities, a very satisfying work environment, a very satisfying and exciting work expectation in terms of our desire and commitment to make communities better, was something that I latched onto. And 33 years later, it's the type of, in fact, all along my 33 years, I don't take for granted the fact that I worked with a group of people who were very different than me when I first came to this company, but made me feel welcome, included. We must create environments in our organizations of inclusivity. We must give that voice that is a little bit different, that has a different experience, the opportunity to be heard. I asked a lot of questions. I made a lot of mistakes. And fortunately, I was within an environment of people who supported me and continued to give me incredible opportunities. So, I often communicate to folks who are trying something new, it's really less about your academic experience, although academics matter, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but I think it's really your attitude. And I believe that a great attitude is as valuable, if not more valuable, than a great education. Great attitude is as valuable, if not more valuable, than a great education. And so I believe, again, bringing people in and ensuring that they feel welcome and included is absolutely more important than ever. So that was sort of lesson number one for me. Lesson number two, everything happens for a reason. The fact, and I heard Leonte, and this is, and his strong spiritual and faith is exactly what I mean when I talk about everything happens for a reason. We often don't understand why we get a job, why we don't get a job, why we get a call for a new job when we don't expect it or whatever. Timing never seems to work out. But it always happens for a reason, something that we can look back on later and appreciate. In this case, very early again in my career, I had worked, oh my heavens, one of the greatest things I ever did, so I'm working as a young engineer and I'm designing equipment for power plants. I designed equipment for Plant Riverside. Yes, I am old enough that that plant was actually operating and producing electricity in 1991 when my boss told me to go to Savannah and walk down Plant Riverside up to the roof. I designed a new deaerator, which is a heat exchanger. And so I'm so happy that the city of Savannah preserved that plant. It's just beautiful. And I just last night was just rubbing my hands around the stack on the inside. It's so awesome. I also designed equipment for a nuclear plant, Plant Vogel, units 1 and 2. We're now building 2 more units. This is a nuclear plant outside of Augusta, Georgia. It's an incredible way to create electricity, clean electricity. So anyway, so I'm loving what I'm doing, and I'm doing all this cool work. But then somebody comes to me and says, hey, why don't you interview for a job in a different part of our organization? And so I did. I interviewed for the job, and then the man called me and he said, hey, congratulations, you got the job. So I walked into my boss's office and I said, hey, you know that job that I told you I was interviewing for, I got it. And he looked at me and he said, no, you didn't. And I said, but I did. He said, you weren't supposed to get that job. No, exactly. It's like, well, first of all, I can't believe what you're saying. Secondly, I can't believe you actually said it out loud to me. I go back to my cube, and he's like, I'll be back to you. Well, anyway, what had happened, it was all well intended, that I was in this engineering organization. I'd been there for about 3.5 years, and the powers that be decided I needed to stay there a little longer. And yeah, let her interview for that job, but she won't get it. We'll keep her in engineering a little bit longer. Well, that's actually what ended up coming back to me. And all these people were like, we're really sorry, but we really think you should stay in engineering. Well, they should have just told me that, not go through the charade. So I will say I was really kind of mad about that, but I just chilled. And turns out they knew I was interested in doing something different. So about a month later, somebody came to me and said, hey, here's an opportunity we'd like you to consider. I'm living in Birmingham, Alabama. This job is in Atlanta, Georgia. would you be willing to go to Atlanta for a 3-month temporary assignment? And I'm like, sure. What is the job? Well, you're going to be working for a chief financial officer and the president of one of our other subsidiaries. Well, I didn't know anything about finance. I'm an engineer, but I go. And the long story short is, if I had taken that other job, I don't know if I ever would have gone into this other subsidiary that actually opened up incredible opportunities for me. Everything happens for a reason. I didn't necessarily like it, but I understood it, and I kind of just took it and tried to be, at my young age, a little bit wise. Again, talked to my mom and dad, who were extremely wise. My dad's like, just relax, something else will happen. And it did. And I went to work for this company, and so I say everything happens for a reason, and when opportunity knocks, open the door. All of us are going to have opportunities to do different kind of work, work in a different city, work for a different group, maybe work for a different company. And as much as I love Southern Company, I actually did leave. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But I came back. We love boomerangs. It's okay. Go out, learn, come back. We forgive you. So, when opportunity knocks, open the door. There is never going to be exactly the right time. I left my husband. He worked in Birmingham. I worked in Atlanta for 4 years. We ended up living in separate cities. And it was all fine. I ended up working for a company called Southern Electric International. I designed equipment for power plants all over the world. I got to travel to South America, to Europe, the Philippines. It was incredible. It was an awesome opportunity. Then that business sort of evolved into a trading company, trading business. We actually began to trade electricity, like oil, like corn, like wheat. How many of you have heard of a company called Enron? I used to say this company that I worked for was a lot like Enron, except we didn't have any crooks. I can't say that anymore. I went to work for this company. I was there for 8 years. It exploded. It started with a small group of people who were trying to figure out, again, how to trade electricity. And it grew into a big organization, and we had a big trading floor, kind of like this big room, except there were all these rows of desks, and we all sat next to each other, and there was a lot of screaming and hollering going on regularly. And it was an awesome opportunity, and in 8 years, it was like dog years. I aged 56 years. We were doing all kinds of cool things, blazing trails, and for an engineer, somebody who really likes to solve things very deliberately and methodically, I learned to make decisions very quickly and adjust those decisions. And I have really figured out that 2 steps forward and 1 step back is better than 0 steps forward. So it's okay to move forward, make a mistake. If you make a mistake, the first thing you must do is fess up immediately. It is the cover-up, not the crime, that will get you. So fess up immediately and adjust. And then just don't make that mistake again. Live and learn. But anyway, we're working on this trading floor, and as it turns out, somebody that I worked with, in fact, he was my boss. And let me see, there are lots of people around here that look just like that man. I'd say, you. Family man, brilliant, very successful. Everybody wanted to be him. Now he is a convicted felon. I've actually seen, and it's hard to believe, how really great people can make really bad decisions. So number 4, okay, number 1, a great attitude is as valuable, if not more valuable, than a great education. Number 2, everything happens for a reason. Number 3, when opportunity knocks, open the door. Number 4, Check your moral compass regularly. And I'll tell you, the first time I used that phrase, check your moral compass regularly, I was giving a commencement speech to a bunch of young people. And I even kind of apologized then. I said, I hate to even bring this up because I know none of you are ever going to make a bad decision, right? You're never going to do anything that crosses what is obviously a line that's purely black and white and easy to tell the difference. Well, that experience that I talked about, whether it was Enron or whether it was the company that I worked for, that was over 20 years ago. And it shocks me to regularly, over the past 20 years, continue to read in the Wall Street Journal about business executives who are making really bad decisions. Some of them convicted felons. Some of them go to jail. So, I still tell young people, like, just if you ever feel like you're being asked to make a decision that you're not comfortable with, you need to speak up. You need to maybe even leave the company. Because even to this day, 20-something years later, there were a lot of brilliant people who worked at Enron. And those brilliant people are embarrassed to say they worked for Enron. There was a company in Birmingham, Alabama, HealthSouth, run by somebody who most people believed was pretty unethical. And you work with any company like that, it tarnishes that company's reputation forever. Georgia Power, Southern Company, takes that very seriously. I just had a leadership meeting and we talked about our values. If any of you have ever read the book, Smartest Guys in the Room, that's about Enron. The very first page of Smartest Guys in the Room are Enron's values. And the words are beautifully written. They sound really, really good. The problem is people did not live them. We live our values. Safety first, intentional inclusion, acting with integrity, superior performance. We talk about them literally every day. So whatever organization you're in, those foundational principles, those foundational values, you must live them every day and ensure that your employees know that they are expected to live them every day. Because the fact is, whether you're dealing with vendors, whether you're dealing with customers, whether you're dealing with competitors, they're just opportunities for people to make bad decisions. Ensuring that we've got that strong foundation of strong values, that they're just not words on the page, we live them every day, and that we are willing to not do business with somebody, that we're willing from a safety perspective. I will just tell all of you this, there is no schedule, no budget that trumps our employees and our community's safety. Today, I told the two supervisors, I said, I want you to hear it directly from me. You can be slow on this. You might miss your schedule. You might miss the budget. And if you do and your peers or your supervisors are mad, tell them to call me. Make sure nobody gets hurt. All right, now, gosh, I'm kind of like a preacher. I better check the time. What time? 10 minutes. Is that and Q&A? Including Q&A? Oh, my, okay. That's what I was afraid of. Okay, so look, Bob said it beautifully. That wonderful poem that was written 200 years ago about leadership, leadership principles, for the most part, have really not changed. And I loved what Leonte said, and I'm sorry that I didn't get to hear everybody that you all have had the privilege of listening to over the past couple of days. But there are some words, in addition to sort of those 4 principles, some words that I think about a lot, and I just call them the C words. And I'm just going to write them down real quickly. So, as leaders, we must be competent, right? We have to have somebody I worked with once said, everybody needs a major, right? So what are you known as? What's your brand? What is the topic that people in your company come to you because they know you're probably going to have the answer, or you're going to know somebody that they can contact. Like, what is your competence? And we call this at Southern Company and Georgia Power being a student of the business. The more you know about the bigger picture. For example, at Southern Company, we're a publicly traded company. We have earnings calls every quarter. And we encourage as many of our employees as possible to listen to those earnings calls. What do our investors expect? Understanding as much about the business as you possibly can is extraordinarily valuable. And it should go without saying, but it doesn't. Competence, collaboration. Absolutely none of us accomplishes anything on our own. And the key to, I believe, the best outcome is being able to collaborate, being able to build a good team, building a team of people that are not like you, people who actually might annoy you because they bring up ideas that immediately you're like, no. But then when you think about it and it soaks in, you're like, yes, I see. And this has got to be about teamwork and team dynamics and understanding that there are functional teams and dysfunctional teams. And what makes teams functional, generally, number one, is trust. So you've got to build trust. How do you build trust? You know people. You have personal relationships with people. And I'm pretty annoying about this whole hybrid work thing. I don't love it, but I'm living with it. 3 days a week. Look, Hollis and Carrie's people, they didn't get to stay home and work from the safety of their basement. In fact, so Mike mentioned before I came to Georgia Power, I was the CEO of our gas business that includes AGL. And I had so much fun today. We saw an AGL truck on the road. We were at a stoplight, and it was very safe. So I hopped out of my car, and I went to the AGL truck, and I knocked on the window, and he rolls down his window. He's like, Miss Kim. I love these AGL people. I love my electric people, but these AGL people did something that even the electric people didn't during the pandemic. If any of you have natural gas in your home, every now and then you might need somebody from the gas company to come to your house. You might smell gas, or if you move and you got to get the gas turned on, somebody has to come into your home. Our employees on March 13th, when we sent everybody home, March 13, 2020, they're like, we cannot not go into people's homes. They immediately put together a PPE protocol to keep them safe. And they went into the homes of people who had COVID or a suspected case of COVID. And you know, in the very early days, that was very scary. They are committed. Collaboration. Ooh, I'm running out of time. Okay. Communication. Communication. Ben Franklin, if I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter. It's beautiful. If I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter. The art of communicating concisely and clearly is extraordinarily hard to do, hard to accomplish, hard to perfect. The more that you can communicate in a clear and concise way, the better you are. And written communication, whew, that's another one. The art of written communication. Some of these young people, no punctuation. It is hard for me. I'm just not going to lie. Communication. We got to be able to communicate. We must have courage as leaders. We have to make hard decisions. We have to have crucial conversations. We have to tell people that they're not doing as well as we think they should. We have to let people go. We have to announce layoffs. We have to announce whatever is hard. We have to make hard decisions about money. We have to make hard decisions about partnerships. We have to make a lot of hard decisions. We have to make a lot of personal hard decisions. Strong leaders are courageous, and they are vulnerable. They are not afraid to show that they are not perfect. And I am certainly far from perfect. Made a lot of mistakes. I've lived to tell about it. I'm learning a lot. I have a lot to continue to learn. I am not the smartest person in the room. I am here for others, which gets me to my last C. Bob talked about it. Leonte talked about it. If you don't truly care, truly, about the mission of your organization and the well-being of the people who work with you, for you, around you, just not going to work. You must truly care about your teammates, truly make them understand through your actions that they are the most important thing in your world. As a leader, we are here to serve. All right, so questions? Questions?
Thank you for that. We have a time for a question or two. Did anybody have a question? Right here.
Thank you so much for all of your different forms of good leadership. With that being said, as a female in the industry, which is predominantly male-driven, what would you say that you would give advice for a female who's in an industry that is male-driven?
It's a great question, and there are a couple of things. First of all, when I look back at that very first group that I worked with, I knew that they were not used to working with me. And so I tried really hard to make them feel comfortable around me. And talk about their family. Talk about sports. Look, somebody once told me to read the sports page every day, and that was so hard. And, you know, inevitably I'd be like, how about the Braves and that pitcher, somebody, and it'd be the wrong team, you know. And I just couldn't do it. But I do like to eat, and I like to drink wine, and, you know, and I like music. And so find a way to connect. And again, the more they got to know me, I think the more comfortable they were around me, and the more they wanted to listen to me. And I've never been, you know, like I read the book Lean In, and I think about half of what's in the book, I'm like, right on, and about half of it, I'm like, no. So, yeah, you got to lean in, you got to speak up, you got to be heard, you got to be persistent. Sometimes you're going to speak up, and, you know, inevitably, people are going to hear you, and then somebody else is going to say what you just said. Like, and everybody's going to go, that's an awesome idea. And you're like, you know, I will just say that I really didn't let that stuff bother me. I just kind of let it roll off my back like water off a duck's back. And I just kept on going. Look, I just had enough confidence somewhere in those early days to know that I could do the work, and that I wanted to be a good teammate, and I wanted to give everybody else credit. And people end up liking working with you. And once they really like working with you, then they want you on their team, especially when you're doing really good work. And then pretty soon, you're the one who's the supervisor or whatever, and you're like, again, it's just all about giving back. It's just all about giving back. And again, there have been times, okay, so one time, I walked into a power plant, and I walked into a trailer, and like, this is the worst that ever happened, and this is nothing, okay? So I walked into this trailer, y'all don't need to worry, but I walk in, and I walk up the stairs, and in this trailer, on this turbine deck, is a Hooters calendar. And I sit there and I look at the Hooters calendar, and I swear to you, I was really thinking, my husband would love that. And but I did look at it for a minute, and then I just went and I sat down and I did my work with these people. And then the next day, I got to work and I walked in the trailer and the calendar was gone. And the man was like, I am so sorry. Like, that was unacceptable, and, you know, it shouldn't have happened. And I did not say one thing. And I would just say, when you're working in an environment that's different than you just got to recognize that you kind of have to go to them. Now, there's a line, and I know a lot of people have had, there's a line, right? Like I was talking about earlier, check your moral compass regularly. There's a line, and I think that most people know when that is, but I would just say it's about being a great teammate, making people comfortable with you, recognizing that you might be different, and that's not their fault. It's not their fault.
Thank you so much for your remarks.
All right.